testing my audio. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Director DeAndre, has anyone said they wouldn't be able to make it?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So we're missing member Labe and member Brown.
Yes.
Are we at a quorum?
Yes, so we have 5. Yes, we're good.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, then let's call the meeting to order, and hopefully member Labe and member Brown will join shortly. So we've got recognition of public comment, and there was none. Or I'm sorry, I was looking at the the wrong thing. So we'll call the meeting to order, and our initial things to start with are approvals of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the June 9th meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair Borman. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. And any discussion? Did anyone have any corrections or anything? Okay, then Director DeAndre, will you please take a vote on that?
And Michelle is on tonight, so she can do the voting.
Oh, okay.
We're supposed to take roll.
Yeah,
Sorry,
oh, we
what?
will. Yeah, and member Labe just joined.
Okay,
Yeah, I apologize for being a few minutes late.
It's okay, thank you. So we're just missing member Brown. So yeah, let's go ahead and do the roll call before this current vote.
Okay.
So please, Ms. Chavez, please do the roll call first.
Of course. Chair Green,
Present.
Vice Chair Borman,
Here.
Member Brinker,
here.
Member Brown, Member Hupka,
Here,
Member Kawanabe,
Here.
and Member Labe.
Here.
Thank you. And then we already have a motion and second for approving the meeting minutes from June 9th. Will you please do the vote on that as well, Ms. Chavez?
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker.
Yes.
I don't see Member Brown yet. Member Hupka,
yes.
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
and Member Labe.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the December 2nd meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Please take, or was there any discussion? Did anyone have any corrections? That one was pretty simple. Then please take a vote, Ms. Chavez.
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes.
Member Brown, Member Hupka,
Yes,
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
and Member Lee.
Yes.
Motion carries as well.
Thank you. Now we'll have recognition of public comment. I see there's at least 2 attendees at this time. There's an expectation that any presentations will be conducted respectfully. We may ask questions to clarify, but it won't be a back and forth dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Is anyone present interested in speaking? Do we know if they can raise their hands?
Yes, they should be able to.
Okay, so if any of the attendees would like to speak, please raise your hand or write in on the Q&A. Going, gone. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Thank you, Frank. And we'll move on and close the recognition of public comment. And in our next item, we have new business proposal review. Now, the Republic Services proposal, cost removed, and waste management proposal, cost removed, that nothing has changed there from what we went over and completed in our last meeting, right, Director DeAndrea?
That's correct.
Okay, they're just now included in the packet so the public can see it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then were you able to find a recording of the post RFP meeting with the haulers?
No, so if I said that at the last meeting, I apologize. So all I've done is reach out to both companies with some questions, and both of them have responded with written answers to those questions. So that was a phone call to each one of those last week after our meeting.
So I'm talking about the meeting that happened prior to our meeting. After it's in the schedule of the RFP, you said a meeting was conducted and the other haulers attended. And then they didn't. I thought after the RFP was posted, there was a meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, now I get you. Yeah, so we had a mandatory pre-proposal meeting. And
Right.
yes, that was, sorry. Okay, now I'm catching on. Yes, that was conducted by our procurement office. So I will get that and send that on to you.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I totally spaced that off. Now I know what you're talking about, so.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd like us to be able to access that.
Okay.
And then, so for cost evaluation, do you want to take us through what you have here?
Yeah. Yep. So I'll just preface it before we show those documents, just to kind of explain what I did. So there's a lot of attachments there. And what I did was try and get as close as possible to looking at the different scenarios. So we had each company, proposed a little bit differently. So what I wanted to show you is all those different iterations, which basically came out to 4. So I'll walk through them and then focus on the one that is probably most apples to apples, I would say, in terms of looking at the straight costs. So the first one that I'll pull up is comparison number 1. Find that. Why is that not up? So I have too many things open.
I can share my screen, Maria, if you would like me
Yeah,
to.
if you wouldn't mind, I'm having problems. So
Yep.
Thank you, Michelle. Got too many things open, I think. There we go. All right, so this is, thank you for that. Yeah, if you could blow it up just a little bit and then slide it over, just so we can kind of work from the top down. Yeah. So as you see, I'm trying to, this is just the straight costs as submitted for both the pay-as-you-throw program, which again was divided into the 32 gallon and the 96 gallons. We got prices for both of those. Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, see, then that gets a little too small there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay. I don't know if we move that screen over, or that piece on the side that says agenda. I don't know if that's possible. There we go. Okay. All right. So yeah, so this one was, so the first boxes, if you will, show the pay-as-you-throw. So comparing the 32 gallon and the 96 gallon costs to between one company and the other. So this was as they submitted, which again, one company, the one on the left does not include the large item pickup. So that is a consideration, whereas company B provided all of the, what we call the base services. And so you can see there that the difference between the two, both on the individual line items and then overall, the first company was roughly little less than $5, both on the 7-year and on the 10-year. And as you can see, the company B did not propose on the 5-year plan. So if you scroll just a little bit down, Michelle, then we have the uniform container, which is 96 gallons across for both companies. And you can see that for company A, the prices under the pay-as-you-throw are the same as the uniform container. So they're basically the same. If it's a 96 gallon under the pay-as-you-throw versus under the uniform container. And then again, no pricing for the 5-year contract under the second company. And then you can see the difference there of about a little over $4 for each, the 7-year and the 10-year.
Go ahead, Member Borman, with your question.
Director DeAndrea, I can't remember if this is right or not. So with the pay-as-you-throw, with the 32 gallon, you would get a 32 gallon garbage container and still a 96 gallon recycling container, correct?
No, it was still the 90 or 32 and 32 recycling and garbage.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you can see below there, Michelle, could you just maybe do it up one notch? Let's just see if we can go up. Just know the sizing. Just go up to maybe 125%. See if we can still, because I'm having trouble reading it on my little screen. There we go. That's good. Yeah, if you can scroll down to the bottom, then what I did, the bottom of each was just those other items. I tried to compare those as well. So, if there was a additional residential solid waste container, so if your family was large and you wanted to rent a second one, that would be the cost. The second company didn't provide that. You can see there's some differences there across the board, both higher in one case, some cases lower in some cases, which is indicated by the red. So again, it's comparing A to B. Any questions on that? So that's kind of gives the layout, and that's the straight costs across the board.
So this is without whatever the administrative fees would end up being?
That's correct.
And
These are
what
the
do we
straight
think
costs
that
from
is?
the haulers. Mm-hmm.
What is the amount for the administrative fees?
We were right around $2 per month per household.
Would that increase over time?
Most likely, yeah, because that was primarily made up of salaries for staff. I think what we're doing is evaluating exactly what staff, if you recall, that was basically an administrative person, a person to oversee the program, and then a part-time code enforcement. The question is whether we need the code enforcement person or not. So I think that may reduce that down. And then there was a vehicle associated with that. So we're still evaluating that.
Before we continue on with going through these, I think some of the questions that we asked, and I believe you may have some answers to, really affect our perspective on taking in these costs. I would like to potentially get the answers to the questions before we continue going through these costs so that we can discuss those answers as part of looking at the costs.
Sure, yep.
Like, for instance, you know, the waste management trying to not do alley service, you know, what was their response on that, the ambiguity around that?
Yeah, so I did receive those responses. If you'd prefer for me to kind of summarize those, I can.
Yeah, I'd
First,
like to
before I
have
get
that
into the
information
costs.
before we
Okay,
go over the pricing,
all right.
since it has such an effect on perspective here.
Then if you wouldn't mind, Michelle, stopping the share, and then I'll share those documents because I have access to those.
To clarify, these both haulers will do trash and alley pickup. Am I right?
I'm sorry, Member Hubka, would you mind repeating that?
I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand. Just for clarification, both haulers agree to do alley and straight pickup, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
Well, it was ambiguous in the waste management proposal because they put 6 pages into pushing against it.
So I did send this within the last half an hour to the committee. So I will summarize this and you can read it at your leisure. But they did both provide me with written responses. So this one I'll bring up first from Waste Management. And I did talk to both of them on the phone. So talk to them in person as well. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So again, this is Waste Management's response. So this was a 17-page document. So giving written responses, there's a letter, and then they focused on I have
They
not
sent,
had a
so
chance
we
to read
just
this
right
yet.
before this meeting received these. I haven't even seen this.
No,
This
and
is-
I haven't read it either. So I just received this today. I have not had time to go through it. So I will summarize our conversation. And again, this will provide more detail. So they're talking about benefits of curbside collection, recycle value share. So that was that share back program about recycling and basically sharing that risk. Talking about the vehicles and then their customer service program. So one of the top things we talked about, I did confirm that although they would prefer to have everybody curbside, their intent is still to service people in their alleys who are already receiving that service. So if you were
already receiving that service, it's for anyone who wants that service, regardless of whether they currently have that or not, right?
I'm repeating what they told me. So I'm summarizing what was repeated to me, is that the people who are currently using the alleys, that they would continue to service them in the alleys. That, you know, whether somebody is currently on the street and they would prefer to have alley service, we did not get into that.
Well, that's what the RFP specified.
Correct. Yep. And I'm just repeating what they said. So.
And that's for both trash and recycling.
Correct. Yep.
Vice Chair Borman.
Oops, I just left that up.
So it looks like they talk about some of the benefits, what they feel, more convenience, being on the street. So
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen 6 pages
Correct.
of them pushing towards that. So more pages of that doesn't make any difference. The reality is we know that the citizens of Inglewood want alley service. I mean, that was the most raised issue. And if they're trying to get out of that by saying it's only available to people who already happen to use waste management and already happen to have it on the alley, then that's not a sufficient response, since the RFP is specifically requiring that anyone who has an alley can use the alley or the curb. Member Hubka?
Right, well, they clarify that in the letter. Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you.
You guys can't hear me?
Now I can.
All right, that's weird. I'm using my computer. They clarify that in the letter in that the health and safety are often compromised when servicing alleys. Alleys can be challenging to navigate.
Your audio is fading in and out. I can hear like some of the words, but not all of them. Can you speak closer to the mic?
Okay, what I'm gonna do is dial in because
Okay.
it only happens on this Zoom call. It's the weirdest thing.
All right, so we'll get her questions when she rejoins. I mean, is that what your phone call was like? Is they're continuing to try to be ambiguous about it instead of confirming that they're supporting what the RFP required?
No, I think the intent is that they're going to continue to pick up in alleys.
But
So, but-
continue is a hedge. It's ambiguous. It's not, continue is not okay. It needs to be what the RFP says, which is anyone can choose alley or curb.
So no, I did not ask that question.
Right? That needs to be made super clear before we even, continue considering them, since that was the most raised issue by all citizens, or, a huge portion of the citizens from everything in that. And we've all put that into the RFP as a most critical thing. And it also needs to be super clear that it's both trash and recycling without any hedges, without any ambiguity. That's an issue. Member Hubka, are you back on?
Yes, I can. How's that?
It's still quiet, but it's a little better.
All right. Well, it's weird. It's just this Zoom meeting. But anyway, so waste management cannot go in all alleys because of low-hanging wires and trees. And everybody who has alley service today should have alley service tomorrow. What I think waste management wants to avoid is the impression that people who can't have alley service today are going to suddenly have it with this contract. I don't think it's fair to ask them to go address by address and specify, but my understanding is that where they can provide alley service, they are today, so they will tomorrow. I don't think they're trying to get out of it.
Well, if there's rules around lines, and if there's lines that are not up to code, then that needs to be addressed. And if there's trees hanging into alleys below code as well, then that needs to be addressed. And the justification for utilizing city collective bargaining to get benefit to citizens, one of the main things is getting alley service, including for the people who had services that stopped providing it. And that's what was requested by citizens. That's what we voted on. That's what's in the RFP. It's not about who has it now gets to keep it. It's about anyone who has an alley has the option to have their trash and recycling on the alley.
Okay, then I think both of these companies will not meet that requirement.
The other one did. The other one accepted that, but they didn't accept the large item pickup part. They didn't hedge or put any ambiguity in on providing full alley service for both waste and recycling. Whereas Waste Management has done that. They're trying to push away from it. They can't even be straight in a conversation to address what the RFP specifies.
I wouldn't agree with that. But, as far as code goes and trees and wires, that's a whole separate ball of wax. I don't think we want to go there. I think the objective of this is to try to find one carrier for one truck on the streets at the best value, and because a carrier that will have the option of alleys, but I did not think that the objective was to make sure that customers who don't have an alley pickup today can have it tomorrow.
That
I
was
did not think that was
absolutely
doable.
discussed throughout the entire set of our meetings,
Yes,
that
it
was,
but it's not realistic. We also know that
it is
it is
realistic.
dangerous.
It's the
Well,
only
no, it's
reason to
not.
do this because we're looking at pricing that is significantly higher than what people are currently paying. And we're not going to take
This is not
away,
significantly- This is not significantly higher than people are paying. This is actually
it's
less.
significantly higher than I'm paying.
But you have a deal and it's gonna go up. But
It already
my
has
bill
gone up.
is
Well, and there's
$30
also in the current situation, a new provider that just came in. So as we have competition, now we have Little Dumpster providing residential, and they weren't during all of our meetings, you know?
Okay.
So there are other considerations than just, we need to have a single hauler. And the concern from citizens, when all of this effort was put into getting input from citizens, was that alley pickup was critical. And that was expressed by tons of citizens who've had alley service taken away. It's
Okay, well, let me
our
say this another
RFP
way.
has been written to be specific to all citizens have the choice of curb or alley. And
Well, let me just put this another way. We haven't decided, the citizens haven't decided to do this yet. Our job is to just pick which one is better to recommend to city council and then get citizen input.
actually, our job is not
so-
to pick one and recommend one to city council. Our job is to evaluate whether it even makes sense to consider the possibility of recommending we
I
move to
don't.
a single hauler.
Is that right, Maria? Are we just going to scrap this whole thing because Carson doesn't like either one of these agreements?
It's not about Carson. It's about, we defined an RFP and neither of the haulers have agreed to what's in the RFP. I mean, remember Hubka, you're
right, because
claimed to
that's-
be someone
this
who
is the
deals
best
with
we can do.
contracts. Contracts and details matter. The RFP we put all the time into the RFP based on the input of citizens. It's not just me. And I resent that you would imply that. There
Well,
are,
it is because you're really pushing back on this as a solution because I'm not convinced that you like the solution of one carrier altogether, that you still would rather have something like choice.
actually,
I think we might be getting off track.
I
No,
think it's an
that's right.
important discussion. I disagree. Again, I've been the same the whole time. I care about service levels and cost and also the environment. Nothing's changed there. And when we have a whole city giving a contract to a provider, they need to provide, I've already had, we've already lost because of, me being outvoted on things, various aspects of what people currently have in their standard of service, meaning all the providers right now pick up yard waste outside of the containers with that for cheaper than what these numbers are.
All of them don't.
Well,
Republic
they-
doesn't.
Republic still
charges-
does for a large portion of their customers who have always had it. They don't do
What
it for
I've
new customers.
Heard from my neighbors that have had it, they've been there years. They said that Republic recently switched and charges $3.50 a bag or a bundle, but maybe that's something to clarify with them rather than us trying to figure it out between us.
Sure. And again, like that's irrelevant because, my interest in in that for citizens got overruled by the rest of this committee. I've given up on that. But that doesn't mean that I'm against a single hauler. But if we're going to recommend the city go with a single hauler, it should be based on the details of what we determined were the requirements for what a single hauler would provide. And the one thing we know is the biggest deal to the most citizens is alley service. So this hedging and ambiguity and pushing against and acquiescing to some people might get that and some might not, that's not okay. That's, to me, that's a big deal and completely not okay. And to look at the pricing for a response to a proposal to the RFP that doesn't satisfy the basic premise of the RFP, to me makes little sense. I mean, we can do it, but if they're not going to satisfy the terms of the RFP, what's the point of the pricing?
Some things that are different from the RFP, we can make do with and compromise on, and some things we can't. That's how I feel. And I tend to agree that I heard most citizens say that alley service was a top. And I agree that doesn't just go for the ones that have it now, because like you said, Chair Green, some had it before and it was taken away, but those folks would still prefer to have it in the alley just due to difficulties of their house being on a hill or so forth.
Well, for myriad reasons, but yeah, thank you, Member Brinker. Agree. All right. So, I'm sure everyone wants to continue to go through all this and look at these prices, but I think and I don't like that we just got, a 17-page response from one, and I don't even know what the other one is, or is it 17 pages total from both?
No, the answers from Republic were in an email, so.
All right, so we haven't had time to look at that, and I think that those responses are important to consider. I mean, I took my time to go through everything you sent us, but I mean, I didn't even realize you just sent us something minutes before the meeting, and it's completely pertinent to the discussion. We can look at numbers, but if they're numbers about a proposal that doesn't even satisfy the requirements of the RFP, then the numbers are irrelevant. I mean,
I don't think that's fair.
I think, excuse me.
Go
ahead, Member Hubka.
Yeah, so we have one carrier who won't do a 5-year contract and another carrier who will. That will weigh heavily in a decision to move forward with both these companies, regardless of their ambiguity about alley service. In regards to alley service, I talked to a resident this evening. I go to water aerobics twice a week, and all the ladies ask me stuff about the committees I'm on. She would love alley service, but her alley is a 2-lane little rut with the wires in the trees. So she's become accustomed to taking it out front. I don't think that we should not move forward with one of the contracts, because the ambiguity of the contract is something that the city attorney can take up. And we can certainly ask them to consider getting that more, more precise for our citizens. At the end of the day, I think we have to look at the price and the contract length and decide which one makes the most sense, which one we recommend. That really is our role. And
that's not our role. Our role is to evaluate whether it's even possible. You keep saying our role is to pick one of these. That's not accurate. The role of this committee is to consider the possibility of recommending or not a single hauler option to city council. We could absolutely say we took all citizen input. We put a huge amount of time into defining an RFP for what would satisfy the needs of the community, and no hauler offered a proposal that satisfies the RFP.
I disagree that no hauler satisfies it, because even though there's some ambiguity, it's not that they said no alley service. We just need to get them to define more specifically what that means. And that, that still is one of those things. Again, I think we can't get bogged down in the weeds, because if we do, we're never going to get anywhere.
It's not the weeds, though, Vice Chair Borman. It's the biggest issue brought up by the citizens that we are supposed to be representing. And we I mean, I'm not familiar with all of your experience with RFPs, but I've never dealt with an RFP that accepts proposals that completely ignore major aspects of the RFP. Neither of the proposals satisfy the RFP. I mean, one way to look at this is no one can do it. Okay, we defined an RFP. No one is willing to satisfy the requirements of the RFP at any price. So we recommend to city council that, well, it's not going to work. We can't, we know it's important to people. We know it's important.
We talked about this a lot, and we knew going into this that we have a great big bunch of requirements that we would like, but that we can't have. We threw everything and on the dartboard, and we've asked them to come up with the best program that they can. We did not say.
No, we
you must do
specified
these things
a
or
set of
it's off the
requirements.
table. We did not say that. We did not say you must do these things or it's off the table. Because if that's true, then I want all electric vehicles, or we're not doing this at all.
Let's not do it at all then. And that is what it is. The RFP is very specific. I read it in detail. It's very specific. It includes the details of what is required. It's a set of requirements, and neither of these proposals satisfies the set of those requirements. Member Brinker? Member Brinker.
Thanks. Can we back up a step? It's true that we specified in the RFP exactly what we wanted to see. And it's true that neither proposal addressed 100% to the T exactly what we want to see. And I think that means that we can either scrap the whole thing and said no one addressed it to a T, or we can take a look at what we have and see if it is worth recommending one or the other or both of these to city council to consider. So maybe we make the best of the situation and continue looking through it. And about alleys, yes, that's a major thing. It's not a minor detail, but we established like almost from the first sentence that we're going to need some more clarification from Waste Management on this point specifically. So I think we should get that clarification.
Well, it sounds like Director DeAndrea tried.
We'll have to try again because there's various options on a spectrum. One is that they absolutely won't have on the alley for anybody who doesn't have it now. That's the most extreme, and we think that probably won't do. The other end of the extreme is that what we were thinking last time, they would encourage people to move to the curb, but would still be willing to pick up on the alley. And then there's a whole lot of options in between. We have to figure out which one it is and if that's something that we can work with.
Thank you. Member Hubka?
Well, I'm going to make a motion, but I'll make it later on in the evening. Let's just carry on with reviewing what we have.
So you have not read these, Director DeAndrea?
No.
And is your impression that Republic, their response to the RFP satisfies to the T what the RFP requires for alley and curb service? My impression was that they satisfied it. What?
I'm not going to make a statement either way. No.
Did they?
So our intent is to discuss these with the Citizens Committee. The Citizens Committee is allowed to make whatever type of recommendation they want as one piece of information going back to the City Council. We will be formulating a communication plan to the community as well that will roll out after the first of the year. And all of that information, including anything back from the Citizens Committee, will be presented to the City Council. So we can continue, as far as, but again, making, to Member Brinker's point, we have what we received. So we can continue. Committee doesn't need to continue if they don't want to. But I think we feel as staff that we have to do something back to the community to communicate that in some way, at least share the outcomes with them and get some input.
So, all right, let's go to the question. You have a summary of your conversations with them?
No, just that was verbal.
So how did you want to communicate with us what you learned from those conversations.
Well, they provided this document, and Republic, I spoke with them and then sent them questions, and they responded in an email with responses to those questions.
Okay, so we just now received right before the meeting, like minutes before, the responses that address our questions that pertain to whether either of these satisfy the RFP requirements or not. Member Brown?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my Xfinity went down, so I have been listening by phone. And I'm just concerned about everything that you've been talking about with the alleys. And I guess I don't know how you can just leave out alley pickup. I mean, I didn't hear at the beginning of the meeting, but I also thought at the last meeting, we kind of said with Republic that since they were not going to let anybody opt out, is Republic even in the conversation anymore, or are we just focused on waste management now and what they are proposing?
No, at this point, we're still evaluating both proposals, even though both of them left large holes in, responding to the terms of the RFP. Like you just pointed out, Republic went way overboard on their response about opt-out. And as we've been discussing, Waste Management is apparently potentially not willing to provide alley service throughout the city. But we don't have details on that yet. So,
okay. Well, I think that Chair Green is a big hole right now. That's just my opinion.
I agree. Thank you, Member Brown.
If I could suggest, Chair Green, perhaps if the committee would prefer, I could briefly summarize my conversations. And then if you have any other questions, such as the alley service, like clarification, I can go back to them, ask those follow-up questions. This will give you some time to digest the materials that have been provided. I'll try and get those responses written and out to the committee, and then be able to have all of you digest that before we have the next meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Director DeAndrea. Please do fill us in on how your conversations went, okay, the outcomes of those, so we have perspective on that. Then we can all consume these, and I think we're just going to have to reschedule to take next steps, because we need time to be able to consume what they sent back, and we need explicit confirmation on the most critical points of the RFP and their responses to it, or if they're trying to push against it, or what those answers matter. So yes, please tell us about your conversations.
Okay. Oh, I see Member Hupka has her hand up.
Right. So I just want to clarify why we spend lots of time reviewing what has been presented to us. City Council, and based on citizen input, can go with either one of these contracts without our input. It is not up to us to tell City Council that we will not be moving forward with this because this committee doesn't like that we don't get all of the bells and whistles that we want. When Waste Management spoke to us, and Republic too, I forget which one said, but they said to prepare yourself for the fact that you can't get all the bells and whistles that you want. And so I'm going to restate our goal, and I'd like to review the prices again, and maybe all of us should consider and use this time wisely tonight, whether we like the pay-as-you-throw option versus the other option, which is the uniform container, and then evaluate just those prices and consider also, do we want to go with the company that gives us the option of the 5-year contract? Or is it worth, with the limited alley service, to go with the 7-year contract? The price is pretty good. I mean, we're all together right now. Maybe we could spend some time doing that and discussing the price.
All right, thanks for your input, Member Hubka. Please go ahead and tell us about Member Brown.
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry, just in response, I didn't come on this committee to work for city council. I think that our goal is to get the citizens what they want. And we're having a hard time doing it. I don't expect that we get everything, but alley pickup is pretty crucial. So that's my thought on it. And if it doesn't go to city council, it doesn't go to city council if we cannot get clarification. I don't feel like I'm working for city council. I feel like I'm working for my neighbors. So that's just my feeling. And also, I'd just like to bring up is that would any one of us sign a 5, 7-year or 10-year deal on anything? I mean, would you sign it on home insurance, car insurance? No, because you can always get a more competitive price. And I don't understand why we're going in for this length of period. Is it for better price? Or are we being remiss in thinking that there's not going to be any more competition out there in those years?
Yeah,
So-
the goal was partly by having the different further length time contracts was to improve price, because for a company to take on the contract, they're going to have to invest a bunch in equipment, et cetera. And it potentially makes it so that it's a more reasonable overall price if they have the commitment for the period of time. But obviously, as you know, we're a committee of citizens that were brought together to represent citizen interests. And we know that citizen interest weighs heavily towards alley service for both waste and recycling. And also, the other things that we spent, a year and a half incorporating into a new RFP, and to just arbitrarily throw away the most critical points of the RFP that we put together and act like it doesn't matter, it doesn't make any sense to me. And that's not representing citizens for what they care about. And I'm not talking about bells and whistles. I'm talking about the most key core cares that were expressed by the largest portion of citizens. And, we know that the people who show up to a meeting like that, each of their voices represents a lot of people who don't even know what's going on or take the time to show up and then even to speak up. So, I am here to represent citizens the same way that Member Brown just expressed, not to force something arbitrarily on them against the wishes that we took into account. Member Hubka.
The citizens are going to have a chance. This is just preliminary. We're not making any decisions we're not working for city council, and we are, there's going to be a lot of due diligence after this between city council staff and the citizens. This is just preliminary.
All right. Member Brinker.
Yeah, I agree with most of that so far. But given that we do still have some large looming ambiguities that we're not going to know now, and given that there's information here we still want to read, I wonder if we could maybe make the best use of the time we still have in this meeting, and maybe do like Member Hubka suggested and start to look at the prices, and then just know that we're going to have to get some more clarification on those larger issues.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason that I'm concerned about putting a bunch of effort and time into evaluating prices is that if they're not satisfying the RFP for, key portions of it, then we could be looking at prices that are about to change when we inform them that the RFP points need to be addressed, that they don't get to choose to ignore them. Member Brown?
Yeah, I'm just going to re-ask this. Are we, again, just looking at Republic after what they stated? That they're not going to let anybody opt out? I mean, what is the reason for looking at their prices? Because citizens are not going to be happy with that.
I mean, at this point, we haven't officially accepted or thrown out anything. We're still trying to evaluate the responses, and normally the evaluation of responses to an RFP starts with knowing that the points of the RFP that were the most specifically critical are satisfied. But in this case, multiple of the most key critical points of the RFP are not satisfied. And so that's why it feels premature to even, to me, to put time into looking at these prices, because they don't even necessarily reflect the base service necessary to satisfy the key points of the RFP. But I understand, we can take the time to look at them and go through it. Vice Chair Borman?
I was just going to say that, instead of arguing, because it feels like we're just going around in circles, I really feel like we have to at least make the use of our time. Because even if we decide that, the alley service is not adequate, we can knock them out, and then say, okay, fine, we can look at Republic for just the fact that they do alley service and things like that. But I think we should just at least look at the stuff with our time. Because
and that's what
until we have our clarification, it doesn't matter a darn thing. And that's why, we have this meeting scheduled. Let's just do the damn thing. Let's crank.
Well, I was trying to move on to have Director DeAndrea fill us in on what she learned from her conversation beyond the large documents that were sent to us moments before this meeting that none of us have had a chance to read.
Sounds good. Let's do that.
Thank you. Director DeAndrea, can you please inform us what you learned in your conversations? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. So the second point we talked about, I asked for clarification on what they call the value share program. And without reading this, I'll just summarize. So it's basically a risk sharing. So with certain products, mostly plastics, is that there could be a market for those, and sometimes or there might not, and that might fluctuate by month, that might fluctuate by year. And so basically what we're doing is we're sharing those costs or that risk with the company. And so in the good months, when they're able to sell material, then we would see a credit. And then in the months where we don't, we would have to bank those dollars within the city. And because I asked specifically, I said, one of our goals is to make sure that amount is stable from month to month, that's not fluctuating. So we would have to manage that internally. So in the good months, we'd have to, again, bank any savings. And then if there's months where there's not as much of a market for those materials, then we would have to pay more. And so that's where that difference comes in. So you'd see a lesser bottom total cost for the citizen, but we'd have to do that. Now, how much of that is, again, there's risk there, I guess. So any questions on that I can try to answer? Or is that enough of an explanation? And remember, that was a savings of, I believe it was $3 off of the $7.10 disposal fee per month.
Is your thought that if that risk system was implemented, that every month or quarter or whatever, that would actually potentially affect citizen cost?
No. So that would be our intent, is we'd set the price, at the beginning of the year, and that wouldn't change. So we'd have to manage that internally, those ups and downs.
So if it costs less, then we wouldn't be passing that on to citizens?
Correct. We'd have to bank that. Now, if we could maybe at the end of the year, we reassess that and maybe there's the opportunity to reduce that, but is there the need then to increase it either to or cover those costs? Again, that's that risk element.
Were
And that-
they in there? I mean, again, we haven't been able to look at this yet because we just received it, but do you know if they've provided detailed examples from other municipalities that have utilized this? Do we have realistic comparables?
Yes, so that would be another step that I could take in this interim period is, remember, we asked for references. So is to reach out to the references and ask how it's going. So I know that there's entities that are currently on the value share that could share their experiences with us.
Yeah, and obviously even specifically in Colorado, since those costs are probably region specific to some degree. Okay.
Okay.
Did anyone else have any questions about that?
I've got a quick one. Would that raise the administrative cost at all?
I don't think so. Again, it's not, I think it's a lump sum dollar amount, where they'd share with us, hey, this was a bad month or this was a good month. I don't think we're looking at, again, individual accounts that we would have to do a lot with.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good question, Member Kwanabe. Thanks.
Okay, and then we talked a little bit about smart trucks. So again, they're looking at this idea of having, they were going to use the CNG with their vehicles as they buy these. And so there's just some more, I've confirmed that they're using CNG vehicles and that they would buy those vehicles for the city contract if they move forward. So again, just more information on that here. This was
Did you
more
have a chance to find out if there was what the difference between the gases collected at our waste station are and whether that's something that's refinable or sellable or utilizable for these trucks?
Yeah, I did speak to somebody over at SPR, and I guess the material or the gas, if you will, that we're emitting goes into, it has to be scrubbed and such. So it is able to be accepted by Xcel Energy in that form, but it's not something that can be easily converted to a CNG type fuel, if you will, to go back into those directly into those vehicles. So there is another step in the process that we would have to investigate and invest in to be able to do that.
Do you know what Xcel does with it?
So they treat it and they put it back into their system in some fashion.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's usable as gas, but not as CNG, the fuel that would fuel those types of vehicles.
Makes sense.
So the trucks were a bigger question for Republic, so we'll get to that in a minute. And then I think the last question for them specifically was touched on was customer service. So we talked about that. So they do have, even though they didn't write about this, they do have an email option, so they can send emails at any time of the day or night. And then the intent would be is to respond to those on the next business day when they're in the office. And then they go into more detail here, just in some of their specifics in terms of how they respond to people and this app that they have. And you can manage your service through there. Obviously your billing would be through the city, but pretty much they have a variety of options of how they respond to people. They would prepare a custom Inglewood website where we would, have all of this information. And I think that was generally what we discussed.
Maria,
Mhm.
could I just ask you to go back some pages where it said their call time?
Okay, yeah, let me see.
I'm sorry, I should call you director. I
Oh,
apologize.
you're fine.
Okay.
And if you didn't hear me, Member Brown, I have not had a chance to read this. So if you saw something, yeah, please stop me.
No, I was just wondering where they had the response time. I think it said
Oh, okay.
somewhere in there that if they don't, if you have to wait 2 minutes, they'll get back to you, but it doesn't, okay. They
Yeah.
will have the option to get a call back. Do you
Mhm.
know how long that call back would be?
No, but that's a great question. So I've been on a service like that where I think it was my must have been Comcast, my cable, where you called them and then you can press in your number and then they'll call you back. I'll ask if there's a timeline that they give you of when that callback will be received. I guess that allows you to not have to sit on the phone waiting.
Right, or stay at home waiting for a call back and it may
Yeah.
never come.
It's
So,
your cell phone. Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions around customer service that I can follow up on with them or anything else with waste management?
I mean, just looking at that sentence about the email, we said respond within 1 business day and they're pushing it to 48 hours. I think that should do just 1 business day. It satisfies what they're claiming that they're making it 48 hours for, and makes it so that if someone does make a request on a Monday, that they don't get to push it 48 hours. They have 1 business day. That it's less of a big deal than several of the other things we're dealing with.
All right, I'll stop sharing and then I'll just talk through the responses from from Republic, excuse me. So one of the things I asked them was, why didn't they provide? I think the biggest question is, why didn't they provide include costs to do the large item pickup? And it was interesting. So they still are going to provide those, where you can call up, and if you have a mattress, that they'll come out and pick that up. Their concern is that with the 2 free vouchers and the number of items, the potential there, that the volume was too much for them to be able to handle, given their current staffing, their proposed staffing. And so what they're proposing instead is that they would do a bulk drop-off event like they do in other cities. So again, the downside is that you'd have to bring it to somewhere like a park or something, get the items there, as opposed to leaving them out at the curb or in the alley. So I think they're saying that it's just too much for them to be able to handle, is their summary.
Sorry for the interruption, but I was thinking about this earlier. I think it might be because their transfer station is further away than Waste Management's is. Waste Management's on Oxford across Santa Fe, I think, or Union. And I believe the transfer station for Republic was Aurora, something like that, very far out there. So if they were having to fill a truck with 1 couch, then they'd end up having to drive 20 miles to empty it. Just a thought.
Yeah, they did say here too that the volume the city was asking for. So remember, we did the 10 bags of trash plus the 10 bundles of yard waste and the 3 additional bulk items like furniture for each voucher is excessive, is what they said. So I did ask them too. I said, well, how has that been received? Or do you get a lot of complaints about, people not having the right vehicle or whatever to be able to transport the items to a drop-off event? And they don't really, interact with the citizens the way that the communities do. So I think that's another follow-up for me with their references to ask, well, why did you opt for a drop-off event, versus a pickup at the curb? And then how is it going? And are you getting complaints from people who just cannot simply transport those items to a central, location?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of it is because they can't. That's what large items all about. Okay.
I think that the bigger issue is the bags or bundles outside of the bin, right? That's what our committee was more concerned about, in particular for large item pickup. Because we said large item pickup would be nice to have. It would cut down on neighbors getting mattresses dumped in their alley and having to pay for it and so forth. But that's the status quo right now, is that if something's dumped on your own property, you have to pay for it. So that's something that we said we wanted to look at the cost and evaluate if it's a amenity that we can afford, so to speak. But I remember our discussions that the bigger issue was what to do about when you have items that wouldn't fit in your bin, right? Do I recall that correctly? That seemed to be the bigger question about large item pickup, even though it wasn't large, it might be a lot.
I think both, I think people who have a lot of yard waste and throughout the year, and then also just what do you do with those types of, furniture or mattresses? How do you dispose of them in a reasonable way? And I think our underlying or overarching goal was to try and minimize the amount of that people just dumping it and then the city having to pick that up. And then essentially the community pays for those costs anyways.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought that citizens were having to deal with it themselves. I mean, I thought there was an anecdote about the last mayor had to pay to have something that was dumped in behind her house.
Yeah, but
removed.
sometimes we get a lot of stuff in the parks, in what you
Sure.
would consider public property. So a lot of TVs, especially that type of thing. So yes, there still is that and their code enforcement is trying to enforce that on the adjacent property owner, but we still get a lot of stuff of it in other places that can't even be tied to a private party.
So can you just reiterate for each of them, Waste Management and Republic, what were the questions that you asked them?
Yeah, so I talked with Waste Management about primarily the alley service to clarify that. So that needs some more clarification, but I wanted to make sure, basically I asked, what do you mean by limited? When you say limited service? And so the response was, what we talked about is that people who are currently being serviced would continue to do so.
Did you address waste versus recycling on that?
No, I did not ask that.
So that's key as well, because I know that
yeah.
a lot of Waste Management customers do have waste on the alley and recycling at the curb, and our
Okay.
RFP is about both on the alley.
Yeah, I'll clarify that, but no, I assume that it was, again, if you're being served in the alley, that they're going to pick up both garbage and recycling in the alley.
They used to. I mean, for 15 years, that's how it was for me, and then it changed.
And then with Waste Management, I asked to clarify, just how they're, what types of trucks they're using, that they are indeed going to be using CNG vehicles. And then that question around the customer service, is there any other aspects that weren't covered? They were at the last meeting, and so they heard those questions directly from the committee. So, and that was the response that they prepared. So with Republic, I asked about the large item pickup, which was a big question. Then I asked, so why is Republic opting to use clean diesel instead of CNG to service the Inglewood contract if they were to get it? And their response is basically that they would service Inglewood out of their Golden facility. And right now, Golden, whatever field or yard that they have there, does not allow for for CNG vehicles. And they're also in the process of piloting electric vehicles, and they're hoping that they can start to implement that. I believe it was Arizona and another state, not Colorado, where they're testing that right now, some electric vehicles. They are very expensive, but they felt like they would rather invest in the clean diesel and put that into this contract versus the the CNG. The CNG vehicles are also more expensive. And so they've opted, that's the reasons that they've opted to go that route.
Did you address their response to the opt-out?
Let's see, then I talked about, oh yeah, the rate adjustment, basically that, I'm just reading their response here. So, you know, okay, so I said, please explain Republic's proposed annual rate adjustment and how that aligns with the RFP requirements to have the first 2 years of the program be fixed at year one prices, followed by an annual increase of the lesser of 3% or CPI. And so they talk a lot about that water, sewer, trash index and that it's more applicable to the industry. And then currently, you know, that's running about 6% and rising, especially in kind of the recent past here. And so if we're going to restrict the haulers to a limited price increase, then it really just makes the pricing overall unacceptable. So again, which is then basically front loading those prices. I did not ask about the opt-out. I think they were pretty clear. You know, I think that's a point that we have to debate and decide whether that's doable or not. I didn't ask for any further clarification on that because I thought the proposal was pretty clear. But I can certainly ask, you know, what their thought process was behind that. But again, I think they detailed that in the proposal.
So your impression is that if we were to stick to the terms of the RFP, that they would just not be interested in regard to the opt-out?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd have to pose that question, but you know, this is what we received is what they're proposing. So I guess then the ball is in our court as to whether or not that's acceptable or not. And so that's the information I think that the staff is looking from the Citizens Committee. You all are closest to this. What do you think about that? You know, how do you feel if we were to try to go out and tell people, yeah, regardless after year one, what's going to happen is you're going to have to automatically, you know, continue to pay this minimum price of, you know, $24 to $27.
Member Brown?
Fly.
Yeah, so I guess there's no leeway on that. Is that what you're saying, Director?
Well, we haven't had those negotiations. I think we're just reacting to what they sent us. But I can certainly ask that question is, you know, if we were to say this is a deal breaker, the opt-out where you have to allow for people to opt out and not change your prices, would they basically remove or take back their proposal?
Mm-hmm.
Or would they have some other terms or conditions upon which, you know, they would still be interested?
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested because I just think you're putting people in a tough position saying they can't opt out.
And again, I think this is a good question for the reference entities. So I believe that like Sheridan has Republic, and I believe that was one of the companies or the cities that they referenced. So how do they handle that? You know, do they allow for opt-outs? And then if they, let's say they don't, then what's the feedback from the public? I know Golden allows it, and they were, I believe, at about a 2% rate, which is what we then asked them to assume within the proposals. So is that, you know, if Golden's running about 2%, is that typical? Is that, you know, the norm? And then what has been the citizen feedback on if you were allowed or not allowed to opt out? That might give us some insight.
Go ahead, Member Brinker.
Thanks. I had, it's been a while, but I thought I'd looked at what Arvada did and I thought they had Republic and I thought they had the same situation. where in order to opt out, you still pay the base fee. I think the difference there, as I recall, was that their base fee was the lowest level of service, like $13. And also their monthly cost for, if you are in the program, was also incredibly low, such that almost no one would want to opt out. And those are both key differences than the situation we're facing, where you'd still have to pay $24 a month. And that doesn't seem to fly for me. I mean, thinking of what my neighbors would say, no way. I mean, that's not an opt out. It's really not. So in that sense, it's kind of against the RFP, because I thought we'd said we're going to have an opt out option, but if you're still paying anyway, it's really not an opt out option.
And it'd be more than that too, because of the admin fee.
We went, well, I forget, were we gonna charge that? I think we were just gonna.
That's what you said, was that
Okay,
the goal was that, I mean, the way that we defined it when we defined the
That's
RFP
right.
is the opt out would be just paying the admin fee, because you have
Yeah,
to deal with that.
them opting out, yeah. Okay, yeah. So yeah, whereas maybe $2 might be acceptable, 24 plus 2 is probably not. So I will certainly follow up with the references on that.
Member Kawanabe?
I've got a quick question just on operational procedures. So if the city council is making a final decision on this, do they have a procurement department that does the contract negotiations, such that if we are identifying the biggest holes, we're not the ones that are actually facilitating those negotiations back and forth?
We do have a procurement division within our finance department, but it usually comes down to the staff, like in this case, Public Works, who works back with the individual proposers for any of our RFPs.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So with waste management, you asked them about alley and truck fuel. And with Republic, you talked to them about large item truck fuel and rate adjustment. Were there any other things that you discussed with either of them?
Yes, so with Republic, I didn't catch this when we talked last, but in rereading it, they had, if you remember, we had talked about making a decision this spring and then giving ourselves about 6 months or so to educate the public, if we went forward, educate the public and roll out probably fall of 2022. So they actually proposed a schedule. Well, actually, excuse me, it wasn't in the proposal. That's why I had to go back after I talked with Republic. I didn't really see it detailed in there, but when we were talking, he said, yeah, we actually are going to have implementation pushed out till spring of 2023. So I asked him to clarify that point as well. So which would be probably at least, 6 months beyond what we had originally anticipated. So his thought process on not starting this work until April of 2023 is a result of the shortage of workforce every industry is seeing across the country. We put the implementation out this far to ensure Republic could have a full workforce trained and ready to go by the time the program began. Republic is hopeful the labor shortage will improve over the next year. We want to ensure we are prepared labor-wise for this work. So that was a new piece of information that I don't think was detailed very well in the proposal.
Okay. So then I think so those are all the things that you talked to them about.
Yeah.
And then we have their formal responses that we can all consume before the next meeting. And we may have, hopefully we'll have more input as well, since we still don't have a clear answer on some of the biggest things, like the alley for waste management. One thing we could do with our time that I think would make sense is looking at the yearly comparison to, which is the index applied growing costs over the different length of contracts, so we can have some perspective on how that affects things, even if the underlying numbers end up shifting due to, you know, shifts due to RFP details that matter. Member Brown?
I don't want to get off track, Chair Green, but I was just wondering, have any of these companies, and I think this has been answered before, but what if someone as a citizen wanted to pay the whole year up front? Would they get any discounts? Because I know we're not getting any senior discounts, correct?
Yeah, we had talked about senior discounts, but had not put anything formal in place, Member Brown. You can certainly, just like you could with your utility bill, is pay that in advance for the whole year. But we were not contemplating that there'd be a discount for that if you paid, the year in advance.
Because I know some trash haulers will allow you to do that and take a certain percentage off because they're getting the money up front.
Sure.
As far as I'm aware, we haven't discussed that in any of our meetings. I don't remember ever talking about that. But it's an interesting question. I mean, certainly that's a common offering when you've got a subscription that you pay monthly or quarterly or, annually, but I don't believe that we have discussed that. So
do you think it's too late, Chair Green, to discuss that?
I mean, I don't, that would be more, I think, on whether we want to put that to them and whether the city thinks that that would be feasible to coordinate or useful. I mean, I'm certainly not opposed to potentially asking that. To me, that falls way below on priority compared to the key terms of the RFP that we still don't have a proposal that addresses.
Right. I mean, I agree with you. I'm just thinking that it also may cut down on administrative fees.
Oh, because it's less paperwork. Billing.
Right.
Yeah.
But
although if it's on the water bill, then, it's not necessarily a separate mailing. So it's not necessarily going to cost much less. Right, Director DeAndrea, since that's still going to have to go out. I mean, now they went to monthly instead of quarterly, which seems odd as far as like trying to make it more efficient, but that, since it's going to be doubled up, I don't know that it would actually save all that much.
Yeah, we would still send out the bill physically regardless if you had paid ahead of time, So
yeah, go ahead and guide us through this.
Okay. All right, so what you see on the screen there is, thank you, Michelle, is the comparison over the years. So you see both, we're comparing the 7-year and the 10-year contract, again, between company A on the left, company B in that middle column. And what you see is that I took out the large item voucher expense just to be more apples to apples. So this was the option 3 or the scenario 3 that was included in your packet if you're interested. But again, this to me was the most apples to apples comparison. So as you can see there.
I was just going to ask, this is based on the last 10 years of the index that both Republic and Waste Management requested we utilize?
No. So what I did was so remember the language within the RFP was the lesser of 3% or the CPI adjustment. So the CPI could be less than the 3%, but I went with the conservative of 3%. So if the CPI was, let's say, 4.7, we'd still be at the 3% per the RFP. So what you see reflected here is an annual increase. So the year 1 and year 2 were the same. And then I increased it 3% thereafter, meaning that would be, according to the RFP, was the maximum amount that they could receive. Is everybody clear on that?
So it's the first 2 years, it's no increase. And then every other year, it's a 3% increase?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, per the RFP, it could be less if the CPI came in less. But what I was able to find from the, waste, that waste index that they both referenced was each year, and it's varied, but it's generally been a little bit over 3% in most years. So it's higher than the 3%.
And what was their, didn't they, at least one of them pushed back on that, right?
Both did. Both wanted to use more. We referenced in the RFP the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood CPI. And then in they both requested at least that we consider using the water sewer trash index for the nation.
And that's the one that you looked at, and over the last 10 years was around 3% each year?
A little bit more. I would say in the 2008, 2009, I had a hard time finding that though, and that it was consistent data, but I will send that in the next packet, but it ranged anywhere from, I believe the highest that I saw in like 2008, 2009 timeframe was around 6 to 7%.
Oh, wow.
Down to about a little over 3% in the more recent years.
When you do that, will you please include both? The one that we had originally referenced, and then also the one that they're asking for, so we can see the last 10-year difference between the two?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Member Brown?
Yeah, could I ask on Company A, with the 7-year contract, why are the prices the same for a 32 gallon and a 96 gallon? Whereas Company B, 32 gallon is lower than the 96 gallon.
Member Brown, you just caught an error in my math. That is an error. So yes, the Company A should be higher on that 7-year contract, or the 96 gallon. So I must have copied that down and then not reference the higher amount for the 96 gallon.
Okay. I was just curious why, there was no difference in that.
No, good catch.
I thought that it was the same in their bid. I'll have to go back and look.
Was it?
But that one company had essentially no break in price for the smaller size.
Oh, maybe it did. Okay.
Yeah,
And
company A, it's the same values between pay as you throw and uniform container.
Okay.
On all four. I've got everything up on my other screen. I just went through them.
I was assuming it's because they would say it cost them the same to lift up the bin, regardless of what size it is, take the same amount of labor.
I'm sorry. So we're saying that these prices are correct on Company A?
It appears to be to me, based on the low, we got the different spreadsheets that she sent, which another thing that'll help, I think, is understanding the difference between those with the tipping fees and stuff, because that's not totally clear to me. I would like to, we can use maybe more of our time today to be clear on what those differences are, but she sent us 4 different ones. And Company A, it's the same prices for pay as you throw versus uniform container for all 4 of those.
It is. Yep. So I'm just verifying on my spreadsheet. That is correct. So what you see reflected in that yearly summary, it does reflect the actual prices. I misspoke, Marcy. Those are correct as you see them.
Okay, so why would anyone, if we went, say, with Company A, why would anyone want a 32 gallon?
I think then just for moving it, the physicalness
Right.
of not having the room or not having the strength to move a larger one.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't know if pay as you throw would end up being much of a benefit cost wise or not, or in what we've actually, the result of it is that it's actually more expensive, because Company A, it's the same price either way, and Company B, it's more expensive pay as you throw.
But with Company
Or the larger size.
Right.
The larger sizes are like what, $1 more. But if you do have a 32 gallon, it was significantly less.
On Company B?
Yeah.
Member Brinker, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah,
why?
I just think most people are probably going to have the larger size, and therefore it is more expensive for the bulk of citizens. I mean, unless I'm totally wrong and more people go to 32, but I think most people are used to 96. So I bet you most people are going to need that. Any other questions on or any other data to request from Director DeAndrea on the year-over-year thing? All right, Director DeAndrea, could you please explain the difference between each of the 4 cost comparisons?
Sure. Yeah, so everybody was clear on this yearly comparison. So yeah, okay. Yeah, if you could scroll back up, Michelle, to option 1, or what was I calling them? Comparison number 1. So again, comparison number 1 was directly what they proposed. So you had the base service, which was intended to include the large item pickup, the tipping fee, which we broke out separately. And then I totaled those as a cost per month for the pay as you throw for both the 32 gallon versus the 96. And as you can see for Company A, I had that asterisk there about that the pricing does not include that large item pickup or our voucher program, basically. And you can see the cost difference between Company A and Company B on the far right, or that right series of columns. So anything in red would show that Company A is less than Company B. Anything in black would be where Company B is greater than, less than Company A. So for example, on the base service under the 32 gallon, that first line of data, you can see the monthly cost for base service is $23.33 for let's look at the 7-year, sorry. So the base service for Company A is $22.56. And then for the 7-year contract for Company B, it's $15.14. So Company B and the far right columns is $7.41 less. Okay, does that make sense? But on the tipping fee, they're more because they're $7.10 versus $2.50. So they're higher on the tipping fee. And you can see the net difference there is that you're still saving with Company B $2.42. But then when you get to the 96 gallon, you can see it's all red. So Company A is cheaper across the board by $4.80.
Do you have any perspective on why the tipping fees would be so massively different?
No, again, I think Company B is that the value share program. So, I think there's probably incentive then to try and get us to do that. So, which brings it down to $4.10 versus $2.50, which is still a fair amount of difference. But I think also that, I couldn't say what that difference is, because again, I think member Quanabe said this, that I would say that Company A is hauling it a longer distance.
Yeah, it's surprising.
I
I would have thought the closer one would be less.
Mm-hmm.
That was Member Borman.
Oh, it's a member Borman, sorry.
And then oh, go ahead.
Excuse me, go ahead.
Well, I can ask my questions after you finish.
Okay. And then just quickly to look at the uniform container. So I just wanted to walk people through the math as you move from left to right. So the uniform container is just then the one comparison between the 96 gallon for each company. And I apologize, I misspoke, but as you can see there, the prices for both 32 on the Company A, 32, 96, and then the uniform container 96 are all the same. So they didn't differentiate between the two programs for company A, whereas they did for those different scales on company B, and only slightly. Okay, so that's okay. Comparison number 2, and again, here's the prices for those other items at the bottom there. If you're interested, comparison number 2, what I did, if you could just go back up just a titch, Michelle, so I can read the top there. Yeah, so what I did was I reduced the tipping fee by that, assuming, let's say we did the value share. So if we were to do the value share, how do we compare, company A to company B? So you can see then if you laid the comparison 1 versus comparison 2, now they're closer, right? Because we're reducing that tipping fee by $3 for company B across the board. So they get closer in terms of their pricing and how close they are to each other in comparison. Okay.
But it
So just-
could end up being higher because it's risk, right?
Exactly. Yep. So you have to then count that risk in there is how, concerning is that we would have to cover those costs in a month where some of those recyclable materials aren't as valuable.
But you're thinking that would not be passed on to citizens.
The hope would be is that I don't feel like we could, I think that we have to advertise, here's your rate for the year, and then we make it up on the next year if we wanted to go that route, one way or the other. Maybe it's a credit, or maybe it's an increase, but that's feels like a pretty big risk.
Yeah, Member Brown?
But these prices don't include recycling, correct?
They do, Member Brown.
They do.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember that was one thing that we ended up with. Recycling was not, there's no option to opt out. So,
Right.
so all of the pricing is both waste and recycling.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, and then if we could go to comparison 3.
Before we
sorry.
move on, I had some questions on the bottom part. It could be on any of them. Just
Okay.
So that first one, additional waste container, it's NA for waste management. Does that mean they're unwilling to even have that as an option, or what does that mean?
I'd have to look back again at their proposal, but I think that we just need to clarify that for them. The statement in the proposal was that they couldn't, like, because we're leasing them or their own, that they're not going to sell another container. And I think it's the difference between a lease and a sale, so I think we just need to clarify that for them. Obviously, people are going to do that. There are going to be households who want more than one trash can. So how do we accommodate that?
And then what is the outside of container pickup limited per year?
Mm-hmm. So if you recall, we wanted to get a price at least for if there was the opportunity to put things outside of the container. I think it was, if I remember correctly,
so that's the bundled branches and up to 5 bags whenever you want. So they're saying that citizens could pay an extra $50 a year so that anytime they could put out bags and bundles.
Correct. Yep.
So
on company B.
Member Brown, that's something to be aware of, because I know that was one thing that you are representing a lot of citizens on. So that they offered the option to pay extra to have that, whereas Republic did not.
Yeah. So what is 50 divided by 12? So about $4 per month extra for that, which might or might not be a bad price.
I'm sorry, Chair Green, could you just repeat what you said about?
Okay, so see the line that says outside of container pickup?
Okay.
So what that's referring to is what we ended up with in the RFP was that it became an optional thing for the proposal for the provider to offer to pick up bags and bundles outside of the trash can. We did not get that as a required part of the RFP, but it was included as an optional part of the RFP. Republic did not provide a price for that. They're saying they're unwilling to do it. Waste Management said they are willing to do it for an extra $50 a year.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a lot
I-
for me. But
I thought that Republic had said they would do it, but it would be $3.50 a bag or a bundle.
That's
So instead of
another
paying
option.
yearly, you
Mhm.
would pay per bag or bundle, which is what my neighbors say that they have now with Republic.
And that bottom section fits with what you're saying, Member Brinker, because it does list trash bag and bundles as $3.50 for both of them. I mean, the difference would be like someone who's dealing with, you know, a large yard with a lot of yard waste and, you know, frequently 3-4 bags, 30 on leaf days, stuff like that. But anyway, yeah. Someone was about to say something. Sorry. I heard a voice, but I don't know who it was. Okay. Those are my questions. So you can keep
Okay.
going with your
All right.
number 3
So-
description.
Yep. Comparison number 3, I took the difference between, basically I took out the voucher costs from company B. So still keeping the tipping fees higher for company B, so not anticipating that value share. So comparing, if we just went apples to apples, without the voucher program, what would the cost difference be? So you can see there, again, lower for company A on the 96 gallon, better for company B on the 32, and then on the uniform container, it was less for company A. So I thought this was probably the closest, comparison 3 was probably the closest as at being apples to apples comparison. And then the 4th comparison, I took out the, or I included the value share, and then again, removing the large item voucher. So if we, for some reason, wanted to go with, you know, no voucher program, and then also doing the value share, you know, it gets very, very close then between the two companies.
Do you have any feedback or sense, like maybe feedback from city manager or other people in the city, or general sense about that value share program? I mean, do you think that's something that the city would actually consider that as possibly better, or is that just too risky?
I think I need to talk to the references again who are already doing this, and how much are they seeing, and what are their experiences, basically. I think they're going to be our best source of information for that. And then how do they program within their budget to account for that? And then how do they either pass that or absorb those costs with their customers, the citizens, basically.
Okay. Member Brown?
Yeah, I know I keep bringing this up, but could you, why is there such a big difference on the tipping fee between A and B?
Yeah, I'd have to ask, you know, the basis for their costs for that. I don't have an answer for that, Member Brown.
Okay, and who receives that tipping fee?
So it depends on which facility they go to. So that's the cost that the facility absorbs for taking the material and then handling it from there.
Okay.
So for waste management, they did say they would use the Oxford station to dispose of all their materials, which is located in Inglewood. I believe company A or Republic would take it to their waste facility out on Tower Road, which is in Commerce City.
And does the tipping fee apply to both waste and recycling?
Yes.
So that's why a portion of the tipping fee is affected by the value share or the risk share, or whatever it is.
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm. So that portion of the tipping fee, yeah, is somehow related or tied back into, or yeah, I don't know if it's half or what percentage of the tipping fee for garbage versus recycling.
And did you ask Republic about why they didn't offer the optional outside of container pickup?
I did not ask that question.
Okay. All right, where does anyone have any other questions? Want to go into this in more detail? How long do you think till we could have all of the things we've asked for, you know, at least a week ahead of, you know, our next meeting? So recording of the post RFP meeting, the indexes, both indexes for the last 10 years, the references for the value share, detailed response to the alley situation. What kind of timeline do you need to be able to have all that so that we have it, you know, at least a week before our meeting?
Yeah, I obviously can't speak for the company representatives, but I would say that I could definitely have that information to you the week between Christmas and New Year's. I can certainly reach out to the companies tomorrow to see if they could provide the materials, you know, that week as well, so that we could shoot for a meeting the first week in January, perhaps. Which
That's
would
counting on us getting the information
between
least
the
a week before.
week of Christmas and New Year's, correct?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So then we're talking about the week starting on the 2nd.
I think the 3rd is a Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking this Sunday, but okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sunday is the 2nd. All right. So our next thing is to schedule our next meeting. So this was a Tuesday. I think our last one was on a Wednesday. We've all been able to attend both of these. I don't have a sense of which is better for more people.
I can't do the 4th, the Tuesday.
You can't do the 4th. Okay.
Wednesday,
What about
or no go for me?
the
I
5th?
can do better
You
on
can't do the
Thursday.
5th, Vice Chair Borman?
No,
Okay. What about
6th?
the 11th or 12th?
What's wrong with the 6th? Is that out?
I am not sure. What about the 6th? Is anyone not able to do the 6th? Oh, okay. Well, then let's plan for the 6th. Do we need to do 6:30 again, Vice Chair Borman, or is
this
that
far out, I'm good.
okay?
Yep.
Does 6 o'clock on the 6th of January work for everyone, or does it not work for anyone? Okay, then we'll plan for that, 6 to 8 on January 6th for our next meeting.
Could we move it up to 6:30 again?
Can't hear you.
6:30?
Could we move it up to 6:30 again?
Does anyone have an issue with 6:30?
Well, do you think that we could be over by 8?
I don't know. I mean, this seemed like it might go shorter and we're still going to be ending up at 2 hours. So I would not count on it.
Okay, well, I'll be a little late if we do that day on January 6th at 6 o'clock. I will be late. But
The
in that-
6th.
The 6th, yes.
6:30 sounds like our best option.
Yeah, remember Brown, are you not, you have to leave, you have a hard end at 8 or something?
I think it just depends. My plans are kind of indefinite at this point, and I don't want to keep moving the date. So I guess if I have to go leave early, I will.
Okay, then let's do 6:30 on the 6th.
Thank you.
So then our next agenda item is chairperson's choice. I don't have anything. And then committee members' choice. Does anyone else?
Oh, yeah, let me, just raise my hand.
Go ahead, Member Hubka.
Yeah, well, maybe we can review this next time, but I thought we really kind of glossed over waste management's solution for smart trucks. And it's because we didn't really get a chance to look at it. We all just looked at it. But let's next time, that sounds like a really good forward way of teaching people what goes in the recycle container, because then they get an automatic message to them telling them that it's, the contamination is identified, and a notification is sent to the customer via email or a text. And then waste management and the city will coordinate contamination charges if applicable. That is one of the things we talked about, was educating people on what goes in the recycling container, and a solution like that would answer our problem. So that's just a heads up, and maybe we can consider that in our decision when we meet next month.
Sure. Yeah, will you please make sure we have info to consider that, Director DeAndrea? Thank you. Anybody else? All right, then let's adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Oh,
Merry Christmas.
Oh, did someone have something?
yeah, I'm sorry, Chair Green. I just wanted to know, is there a franchise fee for trash haulers that Inglewood collects?
Yes. So, but it's just from the Inglewood Oxford station.
Okay, because there was a core request done a while ago, and the clerk said, as per the code, Inglewood does not have a franchise fee for trash haulers. And she also said trash haulers in Inglewood must have a trash hauler's license, which is renewable annually. Under that license, each hauler is required to pay $75 per truck per year. So is she wrong, or?
Let me clarify what the name of the fee is. So remember, we've talked about this before. I can't recall what it is, but the city does receive a small fee, or well, I won't say what the small, large, whatever, but there is a fee that's received from the Oxford station because it's located in the city of Inglewood. I will clarify what the name of the fee is for our next meeting. I don't know if it's called a franchise fee or what it's called exactly, but we did talk about this in the past.
Okay, so then with the other hauler where it's not at the Oxford station, would they too collect a franchise fee?
No, so they're taking their waste, as we read in the proposal, to another facility outside of the city of Inglewood. So we would not receive any additional revenue or any kind of fee from that other company.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I'm done, thank you.
All right.
Finally.
Thank you, everyone. Let's adjourn the meeting. We'll see everyone on the 6th. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks
Good
all.
holiday.
Good night,
Have a good night.
everybody.
Good night. Bye.